So hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We have a few people still joining in, so we'll give everyone a couple more minutes. Quite a few people on today's webinar, so that's awesome. On my side, there's myself. So my name is Scott Campbell. I'm a partner success specialist here at Figured, and I got my colleague Andy. He's in the chat, but also will unmute himself at the end, potentially to answer people's questions. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Andy, if you can just say probably hi on the chat, just so that pops up on people's screens, that might be helpful, just so people can orientate themselves to know what where the chat is if they can't see that on their screen already.
Yep, absolutely. So if you're in the webinar now, you can just go to the bottom of the Zoom link and you should see a small chat bubble. If you click into that, you'll be able to send a message like this.
Awesome. I think we've pretty much got close to all the people that have registered on today's webinar. So we'll kick off now. So thanks everyone for taking some time out of your schedules to join us. This is our webinar looking at producing the end of year trading statements for livestock and milk in sort of 3 steps. The agenda today will go through a bit about Figured in Xero, getting your screens set up right. We'll then look at livestock trading statements, so how to produce those in 3 steps. We'll then have a look at additional reporting. I think it's really important you put all this time and effort into producing the trading statements. And we got some other reports in Figured Lite, which is a subscription we'll be looking at today, that you can produce in addition to those trading statements with little or no extra effort by maintaining your livestock and milk trackers. We'll talk about the enablement process. Our team is here to help you guys, especially if you're putting on a certain number of farms, and that we're in the green bubble to help you guys. So I'll show you how that works and where that is. And then if you're not, or if you don't have any dairy clients, you don't have to hang around to talk about producing your milk trading statements. But if you do, yep, there's some pretty awesome tools in there to help you get the job done that we'll go through when we look at milk at the end. But yeah, if you're a sheep and beef only, or if that's the main interest of today, and you're sort of running short on time, I will send out recordings of this session that you can look at if you're interested in finding it a bit more about how milk trading statements are produced and Figured. So Figured in Xero, we work seamlessly together to produce this information for you. Xero's home of all your actuals, your bank feeds, and your chart of accounts. So for those of you who aren't using Figured or haven't used Figured before, Figured's all about the production information. In today's session, we also do a lot of management accounting reporting around planning. We're not looking at planning today, but we will do next week. So anything to do with your kgs and milk solids, livestock quantities, weights, that's what Figured adds to that actual information that flows through from Xero into Figured, and Figured also passes some of that information to Xero. So we'll also be looking at the account transactions report, showing you how we drill down into that space from Figured in terms of livestock, and looking at how you're set up when you're working on or doing these jobs. You can actually have 2 screens open side by side or 2 tabs. Working on multiple tabs and multiple screens will definitely help speed up that process. So just an overview, the 3 steps for producing the livestock trading statement. It's about completing your stock rec first and foremost. That's probably the lion's share of the work. Then you'll move on to the second step, which is doing the valuations. And then finally, Last but not least, the easiest step is copying the trading statement, livestock trading statement, and pasting that into your Xero report pack. So we'll do all three of those in a bit, but let's go through those 3 steps in a little bit more detail. So step 1, that stock reconciliation piece, we've got our new improved sort of tracker experience now, where you can work on actuals as soon as you get into the tracker in an annual view, which is what we'll be looking at today, but you can also work in monthly in detail. You can raise invoices and send them through to Xero for actuals if you're keeping it up to date, or getting the client or someone on your team to keep it up to date throughout the year. Really handy for those in-house GST clients. But today's focus will be on that annual mode, job to be done at the end of the year, just showing you how quickly we can get through that. The livestock trackers definitely in that annual mode make it a lot quicker to get through this job, but you guys probably send out your stock tally sheets, and the screen on the right probably looks a little bit like that, in the sense that you can enter your target closings in here. So when you get those, we'll go through entering those target closings in, and getting that variation on the right hand side in that screenshot down to 0 is the name of the game in step 1. We got awesome tools like the reconciliation tool, which are those little exclamation marks there saying that stuff's in 0 and not figured. So we're prompting you as users to go and tidy up bits of information that need a little bit of work. But we also have tools like auto aging that'll help age your opening quantities from one stock class to the next. Step 2, we'll go on to the tax valuation part, where we have multiple schemes like herd scheme and NSC and market value, all of which is necessary for you to get the job done. We do only do weighted average in this space, not FIFO, so that's important to call out. You can see how we're calculating things for NSC as well, which I know is super important when you're wanting to know how figures coming up with the numbers. There's little explainers in there to tell you what we're doing. So we'll have a look at that when we jump into the app shortly. You can then move on to producing your journals. So Figured will post those journals to Xero, provided that we have those 3 accounts below mapped up. So that livestock on hand, non-cash movement, and livestock revaluation reserve, once mapped, we can actually go through and post those journals to Xero. It'll reverse out what you have last year and post the new ones across. And then last but not least, running those reports. So we'll have a look at the trading statement for livestock. We'll put that into your report pack. We'll talk about how you can include other income and expenses into any of your reports, even the trading statement. And we'll finish off livestock by having a look at the cash flow report, some of the settings under additional options as well for the cash flow variance and production reports. And these are the reports that I think can provide some value over and above with a little extra effort by just keeping those trackers up to date. So a lot more accountants that I work quite closely with out in the market are starting to introduce these additional reports to in-house GST clients, or using production reports to start off conversations around what's happening on farm, and looking to use other subscription types in Figured, like Light Plus scenarios or full Figured, to start getting people into planning. But those additional reports, value add reports that you can get out of there, out of the app now. Some people haven't really seen it, even though it's sitting in the reports area. That's because people are just so focused on getting those trading statements out. So we'll take a look at all of that today in our work example. So jumping into the app here now. So I'm on my demo farm, a bit of a dairy beef sort of situation going on here. But all the data in here is really just to give you a good idea of the workflow. So if you're on a Figured Light file, this is the first page you'll see when you open up a farm. You won't be on a dashboard with some pretty widgets. That's the full app that has those 2 widgets. For a Figured Light file, you're straight into the trackers area to get the job done. Step 1 is about jumping into your tracker. So I clicked on my livestock tracker there to open up this tab. So a little tip is you can hold Control, left click on a tracker, and that'll open it up in a new tab for you to work. So working across multiple tabs is probably a little tip where it'll allow you to work a little bit quicker. So in this tracker here, what we have is all our livestock classes on the left-hand side, all the different movements we have here from our opening through to closing. So the first thing to call out that you do in step one is get your target closing entered. So those tally sheets that you guys send out, they're probably receiving back around now for a lot of the dairy clients are looking to receive back, is where you'll enter your target closing numbers. I've already taken the liberty to enter these in here just so we're making the most use of our time. So once you've punched all of that in, that'll be the first thing. The next thing you'd want to work on is getting all your sales and purchases in. So these two here clearly telling me stuff needs to be done. You can open up this window here on your second screen or another tab. So hold Control, click on Resolve Now. That'll open up this window. And this is telling me that information here has been coded off in Xero, but hasn't been entered into Figured with the corresponding quantities to reconcile your stock rec. You can click on these numbers, hold Control again, and click on that. That'll take you straight into Xero's account transaction window, where you can see in the description, especially if the team's maintaining that manually, or even better, if it's coming through in some of your bank feeds because clients are entering that into their, or suppliers and customers are entering that into their bank statement lines. You can reference that information in Xero to then jump back into this screen and enter those quantities down the bottom here in this annual mode. So once you've entered the quantity, you can then see that the amount is automatically flowing in there from Xero. So no need to enter the dollar values when you're working in this annual mode. And you can see there that it's updated my stock rec, and I can move on to the next transaction. Again here, I can drill down into Xero from this screen, clicking on that. It'll take me into Xero. I can refresh this screen to see. So if I go Control-R, F5, I can see that the first transaction I reconciled has disappeared. So it's gamifying it a little bit. I can see all those unreconciled things disappearing, and the ones that still need to be done, I can drill down into, look at the description of the transaction, see the information I need, bring that back into my stock rec, and punch in the quantities that are required to pair off with that dollar value. There's multiple line items. You can filter down to a month if you're doing it monthly and working in this monthly mode to get the right quantities for each month. And you can copy and paste the dollar values from Xero into here monthly as well from the totals that it's giving you. But yeah, just that annual mode, you can see how quick it is to get your stock rec reconciled using that drill down into Xero's account transaction window. After you've done your sales and purchases, I've already done this for this tracker, but you can simply add your births, your aging, and deaths in next by clicking on the stock class and the movement type you want to enter. And you can see that you can enter those bits of information that way. Auto aging is something you can utilize where we'll age the opening stock up to the next class under tools. So you can kick off the aging process that way, but any purchases or births, you will have to manually age. And you can do that by simply clicking on the age out option and selecting where you're aging to. So we're doing R2Fs here and we're aging into mixed age cows, and we've entered our quantity. So yeah, you can manually age things. It does become quite useful. And as you guys work in your own files, you'll figure out use cases where you can speed up the process of getting the stock rec out by utilizing aging in this annual view, but also the monthly view to help you split between, say, different stock classes. Just because we know it's not so clear cut. Sometimes you have your clients coding things to a particular stock class, but just to give them the best sort of tax outcome, you can have the ability to change things up slightly, especially when you're doing aging or birthing into a particular stock class. Some people just birth straight into R1 heifers because it's still part of that immature breeding or non-breeding group. So you can birth into R1s if you feel and you understand how all this works to speed up that process. But that's step one, pretty much done and dusted. Deaths and reconciling are here. They're probably the last things you do in here before you get your variation down to 0. You can use that to sort of mop up things at the end. So let's go to step 2 now. Step 2 is about valuations, which get us to this trading statement. If I expand out my nav bar on the left, you can find that under the accounting drop down under valuations. So I opened up a new tab there. And just real quick, if you haven't mapped it up already, before you go and crack on, in the end of your evaluation window here, this blue button, just the settings area for each tracker. Each tracker needs its on hand, its revaluation reserve, and its livestock non-cash movement mapped. And you can select your default scheme there. So in this case, I've selected herd scheme. I'm going to jump back. So once you have those 3 accounts mapped out, you can jump into the end of year valuation area here to finish step 2. So in step 2, because we have under those settings that we looked at before, herd scheme as your default, you'll see that it's put all my quantity, closing quantities from this year's stock reckon step 1 straight into herd scheme. We can click on that and update this if we have a split between herd scheme and NSC. So if it was just herd scheme, I'd be done. All is automatically allocated because it's the right default. But if there's a mix between NSC and herd scheme, I'd set herd scheme as the default would be my tip, because we naturally work left to right, top to bottom. Herd scheme being on the left, the first scheme. You can jump into here and you can see that figures looking at all your different stock classes for 2021. Here's a little helper to show you last year's closing quantities. The business rule is that we maintain the number of closing quantities last year, this year, unless naturally died out or transferred to another farm. You can probably go below that threshold or deviate from that business rule. So you can see these 3 exclamation marks show that we have less allocated, and that's because we have less on hand. So no real problem in this file. But say if we wanted to allocate some stock to NSC now, we can do that by entering a portion of the total closing this year, respecting the minimum rule there from last year's closing, maintaining that. I'll do it for these stock classes here where I can still keep that business rule right, and remove ones that I can down the bottom here. So I will go 10. Yep, so now that I've done all of that, I'm pretty happy. I'll click save and go back. If you're not happy with it, click discard changes and you can start again if you're just sort of playing around with the numbers. And then you can go into allocate under the NSC valuation method. And instead of clicking allocate all stock, click allocate all unallocated stock. And then you can see there, any stock that wasn't allocated to herd scheme has just dropped into this space, and figures getting the per head values worked out for this year. It does need last year's, and we're not covering off setup in any great detail here, but you need last year's NSC stock rec and NSC values all done up and herd scheme values done up so that it'll calculate it correctly this year. That's something that our team takes care of you, and I'll talk about that a bit more when we talk about enablements. But provided that last year's all done and set up correctly, forevermore, Figured will automatically calculate these numbers for you. These little blue view automatic calculation buttons show you how Figured comes up with those per head values for the different groups that we have here. So you can see that they're grouped into breeding, non-breeding, immature, and mature. And then if we look at, say, a mature group for breeding, you can see that Figured uses information from our immature group to calculate the intake calculation down here for the inventory part of it, using the surviving. So any of these little helpers tell you where Figure's getting a value from, whether it's from the IRD or an average purchase price for the particular group of livestock that it's using. So yeah, pretty handy if you're ever wondering how Figure's coming up with a value, to click on that information on the right. So if you're happy with what the NSC calculator is giving you, click save and go back. And now we got a split between the two schemes. We can see up here is a little sort of sense check. You can see that Figure has used, or the valuation tool has used, all the stock from our livestock tracker here. So that's perfect. If there's this number here is more or less than the top number, well, we've probably got some stuff that we need to go and look at and tidy up. So start at the beginning of the process and work our way through. This view status button or option up the top, if you're ever wondering whether last year is completed, you can check here, start it, or continue and finish one off. To click on market value now, just to show you this third option, this can be used for any livestock class that isn't on NSC or herd scheme. Alpacas, chickens, pigs, anything that isn't there, you can use here. Also, high price stocks, probably the other use case, probably the more common one that I get asked is, how do we deal with high price stock? So if you have some breeding bulls, so say if these two breeding bulls weren't really needed or didn't do it any justice putting it on herd scheme or market value or NSC, sorry, you can drop them into here and put your own per head value. So you might put 18,000 or 8,000 into that space. And then you can save that. So I'll leave that alone for now. So I'll go discard and go back, but just wanted to show you that you can edit the quantity field. You can edit the per head field in there to get it to do what you want it to do at the end of the day. Provided that you're happy with everything here, you can click on complete 2021 valuation, and that'll take you into the journaling portion that we saw before. So over here, you can see that it's looking to Xero to see if anything is on hand. This file is brand new in Xero, so there's nothing in there. Or it could be a new farm, first time journaling across. So there's nothing to reverse out of Xero for those accounts, but there is a new value that I can just post across if I click that. If you're unsure and you still got some work to do, you can just click skip and it won't post it. And you can see now that it's locked it off. If you clicked post or skip and you had herd scheme numbers in the prior year, it'll also get you the herd scheme journals to go across for that revaluation reserve, that equity type account for livestock. So there'd be another set of journals. And another neat thing about the journals is if you get it wrong and you've already posted, for the first set of journals that we send across, we'd reverse out what you posted more recently that probably needs updating, and it'll post the new ones through. So there's no need to go back into Xero to delete those. It'll reverse it out, which is pretty neat. That's step 2. If anyone has any questions, drop it in the chat and we will try and answer those. And now we'll move on to step 3. So step 3, definitely the easiest out of all the steps, and that's really about having Xero reports open. Jumping down to your livestock trading statement that you've built up. In any of our reports, regardless of whatever work you're doing, just be real curious, click on additional options, and we'll look at a few other reports after this, but you can include associated income and costs. So freight or premium payments were something that you guys want to include or want to try and include. You can map under settings, chart of accounts, you can map those additional accounts to your milk tracker and tick this box and it'll show those additional line items in here to give you a more accurate sort of gross profit line, especially in your cash flow report as well. So that will impact, can impact all your reports if you tick this option in those individual reports. So I'll leave that unticked. A lot of people, I think more of the traditional sort of livestock trading statements don't have that, but there's definitely a few firms that have included that as well. You can hide comparative data, so you don't need to see the prior year, or just leave it unticked if you want to include it. So run the report. You can collapse down certain sections if you don't want that detail, but you'll see that it starts off with the sales and the purchases coming from the tracker. Your opening stock on hand is sort of simplified there. More the detail, you just look at last year's closing, really. And then you got the valuations for the closing on hand this year, which is broken out into the two schemes for those different stock classes, getting us down to our gross surplus from trading, and then the reconciling of quantities section down below, just to sort of finish up. If we had any sort of discrepancies around livestock in our tracker, we'd have a little red line down the bottom saying we were over and under by a certain amount, but this looks pretty good to me. All you need to do then is copy it to clipboard if you're ready to paste it in. If there is anything that you need to sort of call out, you can actually go and put notes in here and share it with people in the wider team or the client. Pretty standard feature. And you can share that by putting the person's email address in. And you can put something into the body of the email and send that directly from here to that person, or you can print it out with the notes on it. So probably something that some firms put into the review process. If there is anything, put some notes, share it with the person reviewing it, and they can go through Figured when they are back in the app next. But I copied it to clipboard before. I'll show you that just one more time before I go over to Xero. Share, copy to clipboard. Then when you go into your Xero Report Packs, find the report, whether it's published or in draft. Once you find the report pack that you're dropping it into, look for the relevant section, and then simply click on the body of the section of that report and paste it in there. So just refreshing my screen. So yeah, click on the advisor tab. I'll use that as my example. Look for a good template here. Look for the trading statements section in the drop down. Clear out all the commentary that's in here and paste that information in. So should be as easy as that. Figured does follow all the formatting that Xero has. And that's step 3 pretty much done. I'll click on that PDF copy that I made as well. You'll see here that you have your notes in there. You have your commentary below. So this is something I probably recommend if you're getting someone in the team to review your work. If you're sharing a report straight out of Figured, the Figured logo shows up by default, but we also have the ability to swap that logo for your logo as well. So if you're interested in that, definitely ask the team in the green bubble or Andy in the chat, and we'll let you know how that works. But generally people are copying it to clipboard and pasting it into the Xero report pack to finish up that process. For those of you who report out of Xero. Awesome. So that is livestock. What I wanted to also show you before I talk about enablements, I'll just jump back here, is the other reports that we have. So if we jump to reporting for a second, other reports that I'd recommend you guys going and having a look at if you haven't already, especially for those in-house GST clients. But you could also do this for end-of-year clients as well, that you don't sort of work throughout the years. Your cash flow, your variance report, and your production report. Have a look at these and think about the types of clients you have, particularly those in-house GST. We have people coming in here and running the cash flow report for them. And under additional options, you can choose to show quantities. So if I'm going down to, say, milk or livestock, if I explode that out, you can see now Figured in our cash flow shows quantities which you can't get in Xero's cash summary. You can then also come in here and customize this as well by clicking on custom. So some people, depending on the size of your screen, may have to scroll down, and you can choose a start and end date. So if I go August 2020 as my start date and my end date, I can compare that with, on the monthly mode, with the prior month. You could show 2 months, every GST period, show them a custom cash flow report with some commentary with the quantities showing. So this is something you can do, and people do utilize on Figured Light. You can quickly collapse everything down so it's just a nice one-pager, expand out certain sections again that you want, and it'll remember this when you're heading towards PDFing and sharing that report. It'll respect the customizing options that you've added in there. And then another one would be that annual mode. You can choose to run things annually. So if I go and have a look at the 2021 year in annual, not comparing it to anything, you could compare, it's just with the last sort of 3 or 4 years to give you sort of a trend analysis view. I know a few bankers ask for this from time to time, but my demo file only has a year's worth of data that we got built out the other day. But that's 1 year. You could actually go into additional options for a Figured Light client and compare that to the last 4 years, which will paint a bit more of a picture of how the farm's going across different accounts or different sort of totals there, which can tell a story or help support a story that you're trying to sort of feed to the bank when you're doing things with them. Is probably one of the use cases. The variance report. So again, Figured Light, this report's sitting in there. Again, no data historically, but just wanted to show you that it is an option where you can have a look at year-to-date actuals this year versus last, show quantities in there and show the percentage difference. No extra effort, information just flowing into Figured. We've already grouped all the sections together for you guys. Yeah, feel free to use this with your Figured Light clients as well. And then lastly is your production reporting. A lot of people in the farming team, from farm consultants to dairy and Z consultants that I've talked to, and farmers, just love getting these in their hands. It's the metrics that we use, the speak that we use when we're sitting around talking with other people in the farming team, talking about things on $1 per kg of milk solid, $1 per hectare, or $1 per peak cow. You can see here that we're just looking at the 2021 year, but it's pretty easy to see how much a farm is making per kg milk solid, or what the expenses are per kg or per hectare or per peak cow. You can again go under additional options, compare with the prior 3 years, and you can actually select a combination of trackers that you want to look at. So if you're quite a large farm, you can select, mix and match the trackers you want to include in this report. You can even go down to property. That's becoming quite handy for a lot of our cropping clients, or people that want to see how productive they are on a particular paddock or field. So yeah, just an awesome report. We have the option to tick operating surplus only. So if you're sharing this report with people that don't need to see below the farm surplus line to see items that they don't have real influence or control over, you can tick that box, run the report, and those other line items like drawings, etc., will be left out. So additional options is worth looking at. So just enablements. Our team's always here in the little green bubble to yarn and help you guys through things. My rule of thumb is if it takes you more than 2 minutes to figure something out or find something in our help center, drop us a line, let us know what you're trying to achieve, and carry on working on the file you're in or another file. You have the ability to work across multiple files in Figured, unlike other bits of software out there in the cloud. They only sort of make you work in one. Figured you can have a job to be done, whether it's livestock or milk, and have one person open up multiple files and do the same task across each, working away left to right across all the tabs that you've opened up for each farm. But in terms of the enablement process, we have a document that we'd send out to a practice. Our ask is that you have around 20 figured lights or 10 full figures, or a combination of both, to fill out the file, fill out our enablement doc, so that our team can pool the work together and just be efficient at getting all of that done for you guys. We don't charge for that service, so just having a number of farms, a minimum number of farms, covers that cost to us for doing that job for you guys, taking some of the legwork out, getting the comparative data entered, the trackers set up. But yeah, reach out to the team anytime you have any sort of burning questions, whether it's about enablements or you're trying to get a task done in particular. Our response time is sort of under 3 minutes there. We'll acknowledge at the very least that we've seen your question, and we're going to try and endeavor to give you the right answer. So for those of you who are here for milk, stick around. For those of you who just work with sheep and beef and need to head off, you can head off now. Or if you're a bit short on time, this will be recorded. But we're going to go through milk. It's not going to take too long at all. Milk's really straightforward. So we're going to have a look at milk trading statements in 3 steps here. So just an overview. It's about completing and reviewing that milk tracker using the milk journaling tool. So it's an accrual journaling tool that uses some of the cash coded transactions in Xero to quickly build out those accrual journals in Xero so that the trading statement has your milk income lining up with production correctly. And then just producing your milk trading statement like we did for livestock and pasting that into the Xero Report Pack. So that step 2 is a pretty key one. There's a few value points in step 1 that are worth calling out. Yeah, so just a few mentions here. Really important, or our recommendation is that you do one or the other. Either you cash code all your invoices in Xero, you cash code all your transactions in Xero, or you raise invoices in Xero. You can't do a combination of the two. It won't allow us to use the journaling tool effectively. So personally, talking with firms out there, most of them, 9 out of 10, will actually cash code for all clients. So they'll cash code all their milk income, and they'll use our milk journaling tool to offset that cash coded milk income by 1 month. And that's that screenshot on the right-hand side. So we'll get to that in step 2. And then, yeah, just another little call out, there's a lot of clients out there with FarmSource, just calling out some of the value points that we have for FarmSource users. When you have that milk tracker set up, we do have a kg of milk solid feed, production feed from FarmSource infigured. You have to set that up. That'll be 12 odd values that you don't have to worry about keying in. It'll drop in automatically on the 6th or 7th of each month. Awesome, let's get into the worked example now. So I'm going to jump into my milk tracker. So that you find in your nav bar under trackers, click on the milk tracker. It'll bring you into this screen here. Just going to open up tracker settings in a new tab, just to talk through that. But working on the face of this main milk tracker window, you can enter your peak cow numbers here for that particular season, 2021 in this example, and your effective area. That actually flows through to your production report. So yeah, make an effort to keep this up to date. That'll drive some of the added value in reporting. The kg of milk solids, you can either manually enter this in or remove things out. But under tracker settings for Fonterra users, if you have some of those clients, follow these instructions, enter your supplier number, and away you go. So just covering off setup real quickly over here, we just use 2 milk income accounts for the life of the file. So just current year milk income and last year's milk income account, have those mapped up, and you'll be good to go in this space. Additional things that you can add in is it can be a farm owner with a share milker or contract milker that you'll add under here. You can map, and you should map, your dairy NZ levy account in this window here if you click on it. So those are two things that can save you time in the future if you do decide to upgrade these clients to planning, especially where Figured will work out the share milker or contract milker expense portion and take that away from the gross milk income that we are forecasting for you. But just nice to have it set up for all your files consistently. So down the bottom here, just to call out this question, it's asking, do you raise sales invoices in Xero for milk income? Defaults to no, saying that you don't. That's because we recommend that you cash code everything. Again, that job to be done by someone in the firm just allows them to use that journaling tool efficiently through all clients that cash code, whether it's business edition of Xero or lower. If you do for a client and you know who those clients are that you are on business edition of Xero and you raise invoices consistently, tick yes, and you don't have to use the journaling tool because the invoice has a cash and invoice date. So yeah, so the call out there is no need for the journaling tool if you use the second option on a business edition client and you're raising invoices. If it's cash book or below, or even business edition and you're cash coding, then you have to select no. So let's jump back into the tracker. So we got a little breadcrumb up the top so we can go backwards to the trackers or to the particular tracker we're working in. Yeah, setting up that feed, I wouldn't have to manually enter these. They would be grayed out, and on the 6th or 7th of each month, the kgs would drop in. The company milk price will be set by us, and within sort of 24 to 48 hours of the dairy companies releasing their new forecasted milk prices, we'll send you guys a little in-app message saying, hey, it's updated. Click reset to the latest milk price for your company, and that'll update this column here. This column here, your milk price, is if you have something like GMP or you've negotiated a contract with your dairy company there, you can override the company milk prices that are flowing through. And at that point where you've overridden them, the company milk price is no longer being used. Capacity adjustments, we add all those in there for the different dairy companies. In terms of all this stuff here for your milk price and the capacity adjustments, really, really powerful when it comes to planning. Figured works all of that out for you. But by way of actuals, all of that comes through into the milk tracker from Xero. So all of this here, the bank feeds get the milk income. You code that off in Xero to your deferred milk income and to your currencies and milk income, and that drops into your tracker. So we don't export that out. We don't post those through to Xero. So production, manually enter, or can come from Frontier, and dollar values from Xero. So that's step one done. Step two is about, to get to this milk trading statement, is about going into your nav bar under advisor and going to the account journals tool. So if I open that up now and go to 2021, you select in this wizard, select the year that you want to work on, the account that you want to work with. We'll do it once for current year and then for prior year milk income, and go next. So historically, people would have to come in and journal in Xero the accrual side into Xero in a business edition that you're cash coding or in a cash book or lower. That's a fair few more clicks than using this tool. This tool here, that's come through from Xero, that has been cash coded. Over here, we use the helper drop-down menu and click on 1 month before to create an offset. This column here is what's creating that accrual journal. You'll go to next and you'll select your milk income due account or accounts receivable account or suspense account, or whatever works best for you and your team to get through the year-end accounts efficiently. So you can see the accrual journals being created off the cash journals here, and you can click post. That'll send that to Xero instantly, and it'll kick off a sync. That sync will then bring the dollar values into your trading statement. If you don't see it in your trading statement, it just hasn't run for a few seconds to bring those actuals into Figured. And you might say, oh, why doesn't it bring it into Figured's actuals automatically? It posted it. Xero is your home or your source of truth for actuals. If it's not in Xero, Figured should not display it. So hopefully that makes sense. This is what the milk trading statement, or the basic one, looks like. Again, under additional options, you can choose to remove or include associated income and costs. You can get rid of the average rate in the middle there. So you can customize it, you can share it, but then it's just about copying it to clipboard and then pasting it into your report pack like we did with livestock. So I won't do that again. But that pretty much brings us to the end of that 3-step process there. So just to sort of recap there, both 3-step processes starting in the trackers. For livestock, you move to valuations. For milk, you move to the account journaling tool, if you're cash coding especially. And then they both end the 3rd step with going into the reporting, copying it to clipboard, and pasting it into your report pack. My main call out, or something that I've seen when I'm looking at the data at different practices, is firms sharing those additional reports with the right clients or with all their clients, or inviting clients in. They can give clients read-only access and just saying, hey, this is stuff we're doing for you guys. It's your data. You guys have access to it. We'll share things with you quarterly or at the end of the year or monthly. And it's just surprising clients that are having conversations with firms about what type of information they can get out of Figured. Definitely have had a lot more farmers come through in recent months asking about Figured and planning and working in with the wider farming team, specifically bankers and farm consultants and accountants. So just awesome to see all of that happening. I'll still got some time. I'll hang around for 5 or 10 minutes. If anyone has any questions, drop it into the chat, but really appreciate everyone that's shown up today. We've had quite a few people in today's session. Next week we have planning, same time on a Tuesday. Lots of cool tools, bells and whistles. So if you can register for that, I think there's a lot of value in there. Flows on from some of the stuff that we talked here today about Figured Light. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Robin. Any questions from anyone that's still around? A few people jumping off, but still see people on here. I'm going to stop the recording and I can unmute anyone if they want to ask a question opposed to type it out. Just raise your hand in the chat. So yeah, the recording stopped.